I feel like every picture I look at, I have something to learn, right? I can look at it and be like, that was a really good job on the lighting. I wonder how they got that. And then I'm like, okay, how could I get that kind of lighting? And the lighting was like this, and I really liked it. How could I achieve that type of lighting
Hmm.
or frame up a shot in a way that gives off the same vibe?
Hey, welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast brought to you by CloudSpot, the easiest way to deliver and sell your photos online. Guess what? We have another community spotlight interview for you today. This is my opportunity to interview you, a member of the Beginner Photography Podcast community, just to learn more about you, your struggles, and why you love this crazy thing that we do called photography. Now, today I am interviewing community member Sheila Bragg. So over the past few months that Sheila has been in the group, not only has she been an active member, posting photos and asking questions, but she's also been helping out others as well with their photo questions that they have. Now, I've found that in the community, it's whole lot easier to get an idea of how long somebody has been shooting just by the questions that they ask rather than the photos that they post. And looking at Sheila's images, I would have guessed that she's been shooting longer than she has, which I think just goes to show her excitement to jump in and just soak up as much information that she can about photography so that she can use it. And I see some amazing things coming for Sheila. And remember, if you want to be a part of the friendliest place on the internet for photographers to share photos, ask questions, grow their skills, well, then come join us in the Beginner Photography Podcast community by heading over to beginnerphotopod.com/group. Again, beginnerphotopod.com/group. And that'll take you right there. So with that, let's go ahead and get on into this interview with Sheila Bragg. Sheila, I start this off real easy. I just want to know who it is that you are and when did you know that photography was going to play an important role in your life?
So I am Sheila Bragg, and I always have. My grandfather and my great uncle and my great grandfather started a portrait studio. I don't know when they started it, probably in the 80s. And I didn't know them really well. We moved away when I was 8 months old, but I would spend my summers in Ohio. And with my cousin, we would be at the studio all the time. I spent the most time with her, and I swear we just were in the studio always. Growing up, I had, little disposable cameras or digital cameras. I always took pictures of everything. I think one year my mom, she got some film developed for me. There was maybe about 80 film canisters, and that was like my whole Christmas present. She just got
Wow.
all of my film developed for me. And I just had this huge box of pictures, and some of them were nothing, but of course they were just of everything. Cell phone cameras made it really convenient to take pictures. And I used to deliver pizzas, and I would see something cool. And not with people's pizza in the car, obviously, but like on the way back, I would see something cool and I would stop, maybe take an extra 10 minutes to get back to the store and don't tell anybody. Take pictures of sunsets or pretty flowers or bushes or just anything unique. But I didn't start learning about aperture and shutter speed. I knew they existed, but I didn't actually wrap my head around it until I found your podcast. I had been trying for probably like 6 months, off and on. Like I'm very busy. My mom passed in January, so I was taking care of her and I was even busier than I am now. But, I had been trying to like wrap my head around it because my first real camera that I've had for 2 years and I've played with it here and there, but I couldn't figure out how to shoot manual. And then I found your podcast actually, and it was the first time somebody had put it in a way that made sense to me. And I was like, wow, I understand. And immediately I could shoot manual, and changing my settings it was almost like nothing. Like everything, I had the knowledge in there. So once it clicked, like it really clicked, and it was quick. So now I can go out and I can play with it. It's just remembering to change it because of course when you're looking through little hole, right? You're seeing what you see, and you can't always tell when it's too dark
Hmm.
until the picture pops up. So, like even today, I was out there and I was like, "Ooh, look at this," and I would take a picture and then it would come up and I'm like, "Oh, it's dark," and I would, change my shutter speed or just adjust a setting here and there, and I can do it now without looking at the camera. I don't have to think about what to do to make it perfectly exposed. Today, I played around with not exposing my photos on purpose. Like maybe I wanted it to be darker because I would take the picture perfectly exposed. I'm like, that's not what I wanted it to look like.
Mm.
I didn't want it to look this bright. I wanted it to be darker. So that was really fun. But always, I always knew that I loved photography. All my life, people are like, you should take pictures, you should be a photographer. But I never took it seriously till I quit my degree program. And
So then I'm always interested in people who grew up with a visual interest in photography and then continue on until adulthood. What was it that, you said that you had the camera, right? You had it for 2 years and you finally decided that you wanted to learn how to use it. Why did you get that camera in the first place? And what happened to it then that made you sit on it for so long until recently to pick it up again and start shooting?
so he got it for me for Christmas because I wanted to take pictures. But it was a little before that that my mom had gotten sick. And then life got very hectic, very crazy. I took care of her. So
Mm.
just took up a lot of time, which was fine. But, I just didn't have a lot of time to spend. So that's kind of why it took me until now to really get back into it. But I read a book called The Puma Years, and I didn't, I read Kindle on my phone, and I didn't realize the book was real until I got to the very end. And it was like, oh, here's the pictures of all the animals, and it took place in an animal sanctuary. Here's a picture of all the animals and come visit us and support us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like everything I read really happened and it's a real place and I can really go there. I've kind of just been stuck on my little sandbar all of my life and I just want to get out and see the world and I want to be able to take pictures of those things. And so I kind of have a 10-year goal to establish myself as a photographer. I'm not in a hurry. I don't need to do it quickly. I don't need to, making money is nice, but it's not my goal. I don't need to make money doing it. I just made my Facebook page maybe last week and I made my cloud spot so I could maybe share some of my location pictures and see if anybody wants to buy prints, which would be cool. But I just want to establish myself in 10 years so that I can do a little traveling and have some kind of passive income. And I feel like 10 years is a really reasonable goal. In the next 10 years, I should be able to do really well if I practice for 10 years. So that's it, really. I guess that's my drive, my
Yeah.
10-year goal. My kid, my youngest, will be 18 in 9 years. So by the time she's 18, I want to do 3 months in Bolivia
Hmm.
and volunteer, kind of chronicle my time there. And then after that, I want to live in a van down by the river and travel the United States.
Wow. Okay. So many things there. I want to know though, when you say that within 10 years you want to establish yourself as a photographer, how so? What would you define as being an established photographer?
I guess for me, established would be that I take pictures that people would want, right? So my pictures are good enough in quality. I can go out and take pictures, and people are like, wow, those pictures are good. She's a great photographer. I would love for her to take my picture. I guess that's, I feel like when I made it, when I can share pictures that people want to see. So not that they'll want to see every picture. Maybe there's pictures that I like that they don't, and that's fine.
Hmm.
Artistic point of view, everybody has a different one. But if I can take portraits and people are like, wow, she is good at taking portraits. I would like to hire her to take my portraits because her work, is worth being hired. There's a local photographer down here. His name is Rich Coleman, and he is a wedding photographer because everybody gets married at the beach, right? There's probably hundreds of wedding photographers down here.
Hmm.
It's a very saturated market, like probably more so because it's a touristy place and everybody comes here to take pictures.
Sure.
But his pictures are beautiful. They're local, they're beautiful. And I was like, wow, if I were to get married, which we've been together for 11 years, we're not married, but in the event that we do, I would
Rich is going to
want
shoot your wedding.
him to be my photographer
Mm.
because the pictures that he takes are absolutely stunning. So one thing I did is I went around and looked at the local work, photographers that do work around here in my area. And I'm like, well, what do I have to bring to the table? Right? So where do my pictures fare comparatively to other people's work? Because if I can't do at least as good as what they're doing, right, then why would people want to hire me over them?
Hmm.
And I'm not trying to be better than anyone. That's not what I want. But I would like to at least have quality work, right, that people want to buy. So I looked at all their pages and I'm like, okay, well, that's my goal is to be at least that good, right? At least as good as some of the other photographers around here so that my work and me taking people's pictures and getting hired as a photographer, I'll have a chance. So it's, I guess, established.
I see. So I'm going to ask a follow-up question to that. You looked at these other photographers to see kind of where your work stacked up against theirs. How are you judging their work? How did you know? Like, what was it that you were looking at to tell? This photo is better than mine, or their photos are better than mine, or I need to work on this.
That's not really how I looked at it though. Not so much that their photos are better than mine,
Hmm.
but I don't know how to put it. Just is their work quality? You know, I feel like I can look at a picture and be like, wow, that's a great picture, right? So when I look at their pictures, do I think, wow, that's a great picture? They did a really good job framing up the shot. The lighting is beautiful. You know, when you zoom in on their faces, can you see them? Right? That matters because people have these really beautiful pictures on the beach and then you can't see their faces, you know?
Yeah,
So if
that.
you were to say, if you were to get a big print, right, to hang on above your fireplace of on your wedding day, you and your husband and your bridal party, would you be able to see everybody's faces? Right? That's important. So I kind of just look at all of that and it's not like, oh, my work is better than theirs. It's like, oh, I don't like to think that I'm better. I feel like every picture I look at, I have something to learn, right? I can look at it and be like, that was a really good job on the lighting. I wonder how they got that. And then I'm like, okay, how could I get that kind of lighting? So then
Okay,
when I
so
take
then.
pictures, I'm like, I saw a picture, you know, and the lighting was like this and I really liked it. How could I achieve that type of lighting
Mhm.
or frame up a shot in a way that gives off the same vibe?
I see. So the biggest gap that you saw between other photographers' work and your work is, would you say that it's mostly lighting?
So I have no equipment at all. I don't have reflectors. I
No, no,
have
no.
a
Sorry.
flash, natural
Not
lighting.
flash. Yeah, no. I just mean overall how light plays a role in an image. Would you say that that's the biggest separator between other photographers' work and your work, or is it something else?
Experience. I would say that's the biggest difference.
But
So,
I'm going to challenge you because I think that we all understand that the more experienced that we are, we're going to have more technical abilities as well, right? We're just going to know more things about it, and then therefore your images should be better. But when you took that time to study those other photographers' work, then I want to know, what was it like? What was the conclusion that you came to? Because you said that within 10 years you want to reach that level. What was the conclusion that you came to of what you need to work on in your images to be able to get to that point?
well, I haven't done it yet. So, I haven't taken pictures at a wedding. I haven't taken portraits on the beach. My kids have been my models,
Hmm.
and I have a few friends where I'm like, please let me take pictures of your kids. I just kind of reached out in my community and I was like, hey, look, I'm giving away free mini sessions, 5 to 7 edited images because I don't have a portfolio really. My portfolio is only my kids. So the difference between them and me currently is that I just haven't done it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my photos are that good, right? Maybe I can produce quality work for other people. Maybe I can do that really beautiful shot on the beach of a wedding party, but I wouldn't know because I haven't done it. So
I see.
I don't feel confident enough to charge for my work. Some people are like, "Oh, well, you're giving your time. Time is worth something." But I'm not ready for that yet. I don't feel like I feel like my pictures are good enough. I feel like I produce pictures that are quality enough to be paid for. But I personally wouldn't feel good going in there knowing that maybe I won't get a good shot and charging them money.
Mm,
So when I feel like I can definitely get the shots that I want, then I'll charge for sessions.
I see. I see.
But I just haven't done it.
Yeah.
So truly, I just haven't done it yet. That's it. The difference between them and me is I haven't done it to learn from it. Because every time I go out to take pictures, I learn something, right? Like
Yeah.
today, I learned about lighting and maybe perfect exposure wasn't what I wanted. I wanted it underexposed because it looked more natural or whatever. Just recently, I took a picture of one of my friend's kids and he was quick. Wow. My kids are older. They're not that quick. He's 4 and he is so fast. And so I learned shutter speed, how important it really is when and aperture too, when they're moving so quickly, manual focus, maybe because they're so fast, you have to use autofocus because they are so incredibly quick. So every time I go out, I learn something new. And I imagine when I do get to take those portrait pictures, I'll learn something new then too. But I won't know what I'll learn until I get out there and do it.
Yeah, that is always the next step, is to actually get out and do it. And I think that can be one of the hardest things to do because, especially being a parent, having lots of extracurricular activities, it's always hard to find time to go out and shoot. So, do you find that you like to just shoot your everyday life, like what your life is? Or are you the kind of photographer who needs to dedicate time to go out and focus on learning photography?
So every day I take a nap. I get up at 5 for work, and I usually go till about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So in the middle of the day, I usually take about an hour nap.
Hmm.
And every day when I take my nap, I fall asleep to some kind of video about photography. I watch it for maybe 10 or 15 minutes and then I crash out. I get up if I have minutes, any minutes. So in the morning when I'm getting ready for work this morning, I was editing a picture because somebody was having trouble. I think on your page, actually. She was having a hard time and she was like, I can't figure out how to get rid of this. So I spent, probably 40 minutes this morning editing her picture
Wow.
because she just wanted it done and I was awake and I had minutes. I had minutes to spare. I take my camera with me wherever I go and I just kind of if I see something. The other day my daughter, she was at taekwondo. She's there for an hour, so I just walked around the area and I was like, what can I find? I didn't really find much, but I did find a AC condenser fan,
Hmm.
like the two big boxes
Hmm.
with the air conditioning units with the fans in it. And I was like, hey, this will be fun to practice my shutter speed because the fan was moving really fast.
Ah.
And I was like, I wonder how fast my shutter speed has to be going to stop the fan blade. And I ended up with 1/3000th of a second.
Real fast.
Um, but that was fun. So it was fun to practice just that.
Now, when it comes to photography and practicing, I want to know, do you go out with, is it always that not happenstance, but I guess, do you go out and explore just to see what is there? Or do you ever go out with any sort of intention of, I'm going to practice this certain thing and we're going to see what we get after this?
No, I never do that.
Okay, so it's always like I'm gonna go out and just see what. Okay, so then knowing that when you go out and you shoot, when you get back and finally look at all those photos, where technically do you think that you struggle with most?
Framing up shots. And then also, still, though I can switch between my shutter speed and everything pretty seamlessly without looking at the camera, even sometimes I forget to change it. So I just forget.
Ah,
And then I go back and look at my pictures and I'm like, oh no, like I didn't, because I don't like shooting in live mode. I don't like it. I've
sure.
noticed a lot of people do that. I don't like it at all, actually. I like to look through the little square. And so what I'm seeing though and what my camera's seeing are different. And so sometimes, like today, it was really bright and sunny. So I couldn't see my light meter
Hmm.
very well. And so it wasn't until I walked through like a shadier spot where I was like, oh no, like my camera was really underexposed or overexposed. And I didn't catch it because I was looking through the square. So I think I saw on one of your videos or maybe on a podcast something about if you want to practice like aperture and shutter speed, looking through it on live view or live mode shows you exactly what your camera is seeing.
Sure.
And that's really helpful. But again, I don't like looking through live mode.
Yeah, no, I,
So
I get it. I get it 100%. And when I was still shooting with the DSLR with my Canon cameras, I would never do live mode as well, unless I had to get something like over my head and framing was important. But yeah, it's just always much nicer. It feels like you're really in the moment when you're able to look through the viewfinder and really focus on the photo. And unfortunately, sometimes the settings aren't always perfect. But if in the future you make the switch to mirrorless, there is no the viewfinder is an exact preview of what it is that you are going to see, so it's almost like live mode but in the camera. But the disconnect that I always had with the DSLR is that because there's a mirror in it, it was always just too slow, like to take a photo. There was always just a bit of clunkiness to it. It took an extra moment. But because there's no mirror inside of a mirrorless camera, it is instant, and it is a much more enjoyable experience that you'll find, I think, because you'll be able to see those immediate previews of what the image is going to look like. And I have found that it has been a great teaching tool for a lot of new photographers, just being able to see how aperture is affecting your image or how ISO is affecting your image as well. Except there is always a disconnect when it comes to the actual, like, what you see in the camera and then when you get it on a computer to edit, because a lot of people are shooting in RAW, say, but that live preview is going to show you whatever color profile is within the camera. So it looks like nice and rich and vivid. And then you get it on the computer and you're like, this looks like garbage. It is so flat and boring, because it's raw or whatever. And I always hated that. But I kind of went off on a little bit of a thing there, so I apologize. When I want to go back to
Okay.
the framing thing, because you mentioned that in the email that you sent, you're like, framing is difficult, and then you just brought it up there as well. So what do you think it is hardest for you to frame? Is it that you're too far away or too close, or just strange things? Can you talk to me about that?
I don't know. It's just I feel like I'm just always cropping, 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 cropping. And I don't think there's anything wrong with cropping to get the image that you want, especially you took the image, right? So why not,
Sure.
if you just want to cut something out of it, maybe it's crooked and you want to straighten it. But again, I hope to have prints that can be as big as people want them to be, as big as my camera will allow, which is, I think, 6,000 by 4,000
Hmm.
resolution or pixels. I want to get those pictures that I don't need to crop. And I think I just have to practice doing more of it, instead of just like taking more consideration when I push the button instead of just snapping, 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 right? So putting more thought into the shots that I'm taking versus, you know, it's real easy with digital cameras to just take 100 pictures or 600 pictures and not even consider like, oh, I'll just go through them later, pick out the good ones. But I think being more considerate when I push the button, getting the shot that I want the first time instead of taking 500 pictures to get there. That's where I want to be.
How do you get there?
Practice, practice taking more pictures. Like, today, that's kind of what I worked on today. I think I maybe came out with like 120 pictures, hour and a half. But most of the pictures so far are pictures that I framed up the shots nicely. Maybe the lighting was wrong, or maybe I just decided I didn't like it. But as far as like the shot that I wanted, I got it because I put effort into getting the shot before I hit the button. So it didn't take as many, but I liked more of them overall.
Yeah, and it's always hard to work
It was
on
hard.
everything all at once. So to be able to just focus on that one thing, I would consider that a win as well, even if your other settings weren't technically perfect. Progress is progress in my book. So I applaud you for that, for sure. Now, when you are cropping in, though, are you doing things like trying to remove elements that maybe you didn't pay attention to while shooting? Or is it just those simple leveling the horizon and just making it a little bit cleaner of an image?
Both currently. Currently, I'm doing both. But in my yard, I grow flowers so that I can attract bugs, so that I can take their picture. I put so many flowers in my yards because I love all the bugs. I love taking their picture. And so, but sometimes I'll have like the house next door, right? Or today there was the azaleas are blooming now here,
Hmm. Hmm.
but the bush with the little fuzzy bumblebee was in front of a building. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want the building in my picture. So how do I take a picture of this very quick moving little stinging bumblebee without getting the building? So I like got down on the ground and like, I don't know, angled it up.
Hmm.
And I was able to get him like kind of from the side. And then I didn't have the building. So I wouldn't need to crop it out because I like switched my angle.
Switched your angle so that you just didn't see the building, or switch your angle to better capture the bug?
Switch the angle so that you didn't see the building.
Okay, I see. I see. So,
But you can still see the bumblebee too, Like you
yeah,
had to take both into consideration, right? Because I'm trying to get the bumblebee, but also I don't want to see the building. How do I, achieve both of those goals?
yeah. So then let me ask, for that photo, do you feel like you're going to crop into that photo just because bugs are very small? You want them larger in the frame?
It depends on what it looks like when I get
Or
there.
okay. So that photo that you took, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, are you cropping in to get closer to the bugs, or are you cropping in because maybe you don't have a macro lens that can get close enough and focus on the bug?
So today I used my 50 millimeter lens,
Mm-hmm.
and I can get pretty close
Uh-huh.
with that. I don't think that I would need to crop, like because I couldn't get close enough. And I'm not really scared of the bumblebees either, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't need a zoom lens because I'll get pretty close. Wasps, bees, like it doesn't matter.
Uh-huh.
Mostly just cropping to get rid of the things that I wouldn't want to be there.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
the building in the background but I think today the picture of the bee that I would have gotten would be close enough to where I wouldn't need to crop to get closer because the B would be in the middle of the frame, taking up the whole middle square. Like you divide it into thirds, he would take up the whole middle square, with the flower taking up majority of the rest of the photo.
Would you be able to share that photo? I mean, not right now at this moment, but I mean, like, would you be able to share it so that I can post it in the show notes? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I haven't looked at it yet, so I don't know how good it is, but that was the goal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the whole fun of photography, right? So I know that in the group you had talked several times, things about lenses, things about lighting, these pieces of kit and gear that can be overwhelming sometimes. So let's talk about that for a moment, because I remember, I'm looking at it right now, back in February, you had posted questions about lenses, which ones to get. There was still kind of some confusion there. Can you walk me through what the main confusion was and if you made a decision?
So there's a lot. There's a lot of lenses.
Yes.
So I have a Rebel T7. Mine's actually a 2000D,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the Rebel T7. But if you just go on Amazon, right, and you're like lenses for the Canon, T7,
Good luck.
good luck, right? And then Google, it's kind of the same thing. You get a lot of lenses that aren't Canon. They're not brand specific, so maybe they work for a lot of other cameras too, off-brand names that you've never heard of. And then if you try to go somewhere like Reddit, because I like going to Reddit for real people,
Real
right? A
people.
big collection of real people's comments about things. Very easy. So many different opinions about which lenses to get for what. So when it very first started, right, I was like, okay, what lens do I use for what? Like, my camera came with the 18 to 55, but then it came with like
Mm-hmm.
two lens adapters. I didn't even know they were lens adapters until I think I posted in the group and somebody was like, those aren't even lenses. They're just, they're like additions to your lenses. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even know that.
Oh, are these the like they screw on? They screw on to the front of the lens? Is that it?
They screw onto the 18 to 55.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay,
there's a
yes.
macro
Mm-hmm.
and then a wide angle. So I'm like trying to figure out like what I use each one for because there's three, right? My camera was a kit camera and it came
Sure.
with three. And I'm like, what do I use these for? So you try to Google like what lenses to use for what. Good luck.
Yeah.
Everybody has such a different opinion on some people will tell you that a 50 millimeter lens is great for portraits, but then other people are like, oh, 85 is essential. And then you have someone that's like, oh, what is it, a 23
Mm-hmm.
wide angle lens? They're like, oh, that's my go-to. Like, that's what I use. And there's so just vast opinions on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like if I was going to buy a lens, what would I buy? Because everybody's saying the kit lenses aren't great, like invest in new lenses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh no, like if my kit lenses aren't great, like where do I start? Everybody says I need something different. I ended up buying the 50, and today I took just that out. I left everything else in the bag in the car because I did not want to switch lenses. I only wanted to play with that. So I guess I did have a purpose going out, right? I didn't know it till I got there, but my purpose was only to use that 50 millimeter lens, and every shot that I took today was only with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's just the overwhelming amount of information, like what lens to use for what. But now I realize you can use any lens for anything.
Yep.
It just depends on kind of what you're going for. So, but since I got the 50, it's kind of stayed on my camera.
Yeah, the 50 is a wonderful first lens for sure and it can just help you, learn so much. I remember though, like I straight up remember, I still know exactly where I was and the feeling of confusion that I had in my head. And this was after I had went through film school, trying to figure out, because I also had the kit lens for my first digital camera, and trying to figure out like, why do people buy a 50 millimeter prime lens when the kit lens goes to 50 millimeter and more? Like it's more
Yeah.
versatile. Like why
Huh?
would people buy that? It's just a whole world of confusing things I know in the beginning. So,
Yeah.
but it is
That's it
truly a
though,
great
right?
lens. Yeah, yeah.
Like why buy a 50 millimeter? Mine's 18 to 55. And then
It
I
goes to
have,
50. Yeah.
why buy like a 23 or whatever when 18 to 55, right? Like I can
Mm.
get the focal length I want in there, but it's not the same, is it?
It's not the
So,
same. No, no.
um,
So where are you
and
at now
being
with lenses? Because now you got the 50. Is there still confusion? Is there anything that I can help you with that maybe is burning inside of you?
so there was a little bit of an adjustment, right? I have to be a lot farther away with the 50 than I did with my 18 to 55.
Yep.
I didn't know what I was going to get when I got my 50. I'm like, okay, everybody says this lens is a good lens. Let's order that. So I did. And I got it. The first time I went to take pictures with it, I was so excited. I was like, I got my new lens. I'm gonna go take pictures. I put it on my camera and I was lost. I was like, I couldn't get it to focus manually to save my life.
Hmm.
I just couldn't. I don't know. I don't know what was happening. And the end of the day, I felt so darn defeated. I was like, man, I'm not even cut out for this. Like, why should I even bother picking up my camera anymore? I was having like one of those moments. And then 2 days later, I picked it up again and I was like, okay, I'm gonna own this thing today. Like today's the day. This lens and me, we're gonna become acquainted and I'm gonna get good pictures. And I did. And I took it out and I took lots of pictures. And it was just, being far away enough to get the picture I wanted because I didn't really have that. I would just zoom in and out with my 18 and 55.
And now you got to zoom out with your feet. You got to get real far
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is real hard. I
Especially if you're
know.
taking pictures of people, you have to be a lot farther than actually. I just got a backdrop and a backdrop stand. And so I set it up in the living room and I was like, I'm going to take pictures of my little one, right? So I hung up the backdrop that I had and tried to take pictures of her in my living room, but my living room isn't wide enough for me to use the
Yeah.
50 millimeter lens.
Yeah.
So I had to switch to the 1855, which was kind of disappointing because I knew the aperture that I wanted, I was not going to be able to get from my kit lens.
Mm.
So, that was fun. And it was dark, so I needed a tripod, but even with a tripod, my living
Kids
room's not
still
very
move.
small, but
Yeah.
kids move, it was
Yeah.
dark. So,
Well, okay, so you would switch to the standard lens for that. And at the end of the day, like, are you happy that you did it, or are you upset at the quality of the photos
the ones that I took
in front of the
the other
backdrop?
night,
Hmm.
I was not happy at all. It was very dark, so but I still just could not get the pictures that I wanted. So,
Yeah, yeah.
gotta get a flash.
It's
That's my
it's
next
that's the next
my
purchase,
next
huh?
purchase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough because even though there are tools that we can use, like raising up our ISO or slowing down our shutter speed or trying to open up our aperture as much as we can, it still doesn't, unfortunately, change the quality of light. Like it may increase the quantity of light that is able to come in, but it doesn't increase the quality of light. And that was very difficult for me to understand for a long time until I got a flash. So I think that that being your next purchase is really going to help. But Canon also makes, which actually you are seeing me on this lens right now, is a 24 millimeter f 2.8 lens, and it's a prime lens.
That's what it is. 24, not 23.
It's
24.
yeah, on Fuji it's 23, so I understand. But yeah, they have the 24 millimeter f 2.8 lens, and I think that it's about the same price as the 50 1.8. And I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. Like it works, and it has like autofocus. Actually, I turn on manual. Oh no, it is still an autofocus and stuff, and just an old camera. But it's wonderful, and it would definitely help you out in situations like that, and still allow in more light than the standard kit lens. So if you're confused, I would recommend that one and say add that one to the wish list and maybe pick that up
It's already in
after
there.
the flash. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, because then it becomes like, well, how many things do I need to have? Like how much stuff do I have to be able to take a photograph that I'm happy with? And trying to keep that amount of gear low is only going to help make you a better photographer in the long run. Because if you just buy all the gear up front and you have access to everything, I found, because like an idiot, that's exactly what I did. Had the 16 to 35, 24 to 70, 70 to 200. I felt so bored in photography just because it was like, just because there were so many options. Whereas if you only have two, three lenses and you know how to work them well, then I find that my creativity goes through the roof, specifically with prime lenses that don't zoom. So I don't know, but we all got to figure that out on our own. You know what I mean? But I do want to ask because photography is very much a creative pursuit, which means that we are creating something, right? Something is in our head. We have this idea. We use this tool in our hands and we are able to create something. But sometimes we need help. We need to help. We need help figuring out what it is that we want to shoot in the form of inspiration. So, where do you find inspiration for the photos that you take?
Don't. I'm not sure. I don't really. Today I was like, I have about an hour and a half to spare.
Uh huh.
I need to go out and take pictures because I don't have that much time usually.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. Maybe limited time is my inspiration because I only have so much that I can actually go out and practice, and I never know what it's going to be. So today, after I dropped her off at school, I was like, okay, I have about an hour and a half to play with. Like, where can I go? I was like, okay, I'll go downtown. What am I going to take pictures of? I have no idea. So I just walked around and everything that looked interesting, I took a picture of. And then I figured I'll sort through them later. And that's kind of, you know, my kids, if I'm taking pictures of them, be like, hey guys, want to do a photo shoot? They're like, yeah. Usually they're like, no, mom, please don't make me do this
Yeah.
again. Every once in a while, though, they say yes and they're excited. And then we go out and we get really good shots.
Hmm.
Usually they say no. The other night when I was taking pictures of my little one, she did not want anything to do with that. She was like, oh, she said yes enthusiastically, but then when it came down to actually doing it, she was like, oh.
Oh, no.
Um,
Kids.
so I don't really have. My inspiration is just wanting to be better, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
I want to be better. I want to take better pictures. I want to take pictures that I'm happy with. Not that they need to be compared to anybody's, but to me, in my head, I have an idea of what I'm trying to achieve. And though I'd like to take portraits for financial gain at some point when I feel comfortable charging people, my ultimate goal is to travel and do landscapes and macro photography on little bugs and flowers. And I like getting in as close as possible and getting like every little detail that you can't usually see with your eyes, either because you don't want to get that close, like to little bumblebee, they're little fuzzy, or wasps, or, you wouldn't want to get that close. Most people, anyways.
Yeah, me. Not
Um,
me.
but I don't mind getting that close. And I like how when the picture's finished, I can see all of those things. And I have bad eyes, so I'm wearing glasses, but even with my glasses on, I still can't see great. I also find when I'm trying to look through the little square, I usually take my glasses off, which isn't helpful focus wise, but I can see better without them. How do you manage that? How do you manage taking pictures with glasses?
Yeah, that's a solid question. So I hope that it helps you to know that when the T7 is considered an entry-level camera, and therefore the viewfinder is a fair bit smaller than it would be on something like a full-frame camera or more of a professional grade camera. It's like twice the size. It's much larger on a larger camera. So that helped, right? Because I had to upgrade to more of a professional body once I started shooting weddings. But then Fuji uses approximately, it's close, I think it's 0.78% magnification, whereas a full frame camera is probably going to have a 1-to-1 magnification. So it's like, imagine the viewfinder being the size of a piece of film, right? That's huge, that's large that you can look at. So it becomes less of an issue as you get more of professional grade camera, I guess, so just look out for
That's
that.
good to know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not going to be lost forever, because I thought the same thing. And especially because in entry level cameras, I think that the mirror that you're looking through or the glass that you're looking through just also isn't as clear. I believe that there's a lot more light restriction when you look through it than there is with more professional grade cameras. So just know that it will get better when it is time for you to upgrade. It's going to be like a huge difference shooting with glasses, so you can look out for that. But otherwise,
Good.
you just gotta ride it out for the time being and just hope for the best, really, unfortunately. Or unless you wanted to I don't know, use the I've seen some people hook up the like the Canon app and then just mount it to the hot shoe of their camera so that they can always see what's going on. But that's not my style of photography, and I'm yeah, assuming after our
I'm not
conversation here
interested.
that's not yours either. Not yours. I want to know though, in let's say 100 years from now, right? 10 years from now, you become the photographer that you were envisioning yourself to be right now. 100 years from now, people find your photos, right? They're just looking through your photos. How do you want those people to feel when looking at your images?
Free. Like on my little sandbar, I have felt very trapped. And so in nature, I feel free, right? And so that's probably why I like taking pictures of nature the most. I feel free, happy. I feel happy when I see bumblebees and flowers and water that's not my beach or sound. Rivers and streams and lakes, like they're naturally beautiful. I hope to share that with the world. You know, I hope that I can share the natural beauties of the world.
So how do you get there?
I have to go to the places. I have to go there. But I'm going to practice around here first because
Practice,
I'm
yeah.
kind of stuck here.
Practice, practice, practice. Yes, that is the theme for sure. That was
10,000
beautiful.
shots, right?
Oh man, it's so many more than that. I promise you, it is. I wish that it was just 10,000 shots. At least for me, it was closer to like probably 100,000 shots before
I
I
don't
was
even know how you
really.
would calculate that.
Yeah. Well, the camera tracks like the shutter count of the camera. So, you could just add it up over time. But I guess that
Never seen
100,000
that. I'll
shots,
have to look.
yeah, I guess that's more just an internal feeling. It's probably more than 100,000. But for many others, it's closer to 10,000. I'm also very indecisive sometimes when it comes to shooting. So I'll think that I like something while I shoot it, and then I get it back on the computer, and I'm like, no, I actually hate all of this. And it's not necessarily the quality of the image or anything like that. It's just, I don't know. I just changed my mind. Like, why did I even shoot this? Like, this doesn't even make sense. And then I just don't like it anymore. So again, hopefully that will be much shorter for you, and 10,000 will be more of an appropriate number. I want to transition a little bit and know more about you and how you found the group, because the group continues to grow, and people say that it is one of their favorite communities for photographers. But I want to hear your opinion, because you're very active in the group, so you must feel a certain way about it.
So I listen to podcasts when I'm watering flowers, unless like the birds are chirping and it's a beautiful day, then I'll listen to them instead.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I listen to something, whether it's a book or a podcast. Here lately, it's just exclusively podcast, and that's how I found yours. I was like, well, I am spending all my time learning about photography, YouTube videos, websites. Like if I have 5 minutes, that's what I'm doing. But I'm also on the road a lot. So, like I said, I go to a lot of sports. I'm back and forth. I'm at work. There's an hour between each sport. Usually, maybe I'm stuck in the car, or just I'm always on the go. And podcast for learning really work for me for that reason. So I just typed into Spotify photography podcast, and I ended up on yours. And I listened to the first two episodes, and I was like, okay, like his voice doesn't annoy me. Podcasts, because right? Like some podcasts, you get on them and you're like, man, I cannot listen to these people talk for an hour. So I was like, okay, his voice is nice. Like I could listen to this. I'm gonna keep listening. Like he's interesting, he's funny. Then I just kept listening, and then all of a sudden I'm 10 episodes in, and I'm like, okay, I like this. Then I found some of your YouTube videos, and I started watching those, and I just kept listening. I just finished the one on ethical photography the other
Mm,
day, actually,
mm-hmm.
which
What'd
I
you think?
really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I loved that. I had never thought about that before. So it was really interesting to think, kind of like how you were asking. It came to mind when you asked about what you would want people to see in 100 years. And that podcast came to mind, like ethical photography, what you want people to see in your pictures, being intentional and, just taking pictures with a purpose,
Yeah.
like not putting negative juju into the world, I guess,
So how did you find the group?
through the podcast.
Well,
At the end
yeah,
of the
but I guess I
podcast,
mean, you heard about it on the podcast, but then you came in. I guess I meant, how did you find the group to be? Like, how did you like the group? I
oh,
really phrased that pretty poorly. Yeah, sorry about that.
so I joined the group, and I just kind of lurked for a little while, reading what everybody else is saying, till I felt comfortable enough to post my own question. And everybody was supportive and helpful, which is nice. You don't always get that in a group on the internet, especially.
Especially
Can be
Reddit.
kind of a
Yeah.
brutal world out there. And I liked it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna be active, and I know things now, so I feel like I'm able to help people. So
Hmm.
it's nice to be able to help people when they have a question that I can answer. I like that people ask questions. I like that people post their work. I like that you can post your work and ask for criticism, and it's all very technical. Of course, it's subjective, right? Because maybe I meant for the picture to be underexposed, or, you know, but it's nice that you can post your own pictures to be criticized so that you can grow, right? Because
Hmm.
that's the goal, growing.
Have you
So
found
I
that
like it.
constructive criticism has been the most beneficial part of the group for you, or is it something else?
I don't think I've posted that many things to be criticized, but
Mm.
I learn a lot from other people's criticisms.
Ah.
People post their pictures, and then I just look at them and read all the comments, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I see what they're saying here with the lighting, or, maybe they should have got lower down on the ground or left this part out. So yeah, just learning through other people's criticisms too is really helpful, because often we look at pictures, but even there's a lot of people that put out pictures, and maybe the pictures are something good for them, but maybe they're not great pictures overall.
Yes.
But you wouldn't go on and technically, like in a technical way, criticize their picture that they posted, because it would be unkind if they didn't
Hmm.
ask for it. So you see a lot of picture. It just makes you be able to view other people's work differently too, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my own. So I can look at my own and be like, oh, that, that lighting wasn't great, or I didn't frame up that shot good because I have, I'm able to lurk through everybody else's post and see all these criticisms. And I'm able to take that advice as well.
Yeah. Is there anything that you learned in the group that you wish that maybe you learned earlier in your photography journey?
All of it, really. Using live view.
uh,
Using live view. If I would have known that when I first picked up my camera for the very first time, if I would have known that I could have understood aperture easily by just turning on live view, right? And turning the knob. Like, boy, would that have made me understand better. Like, of course,
yes.
and everybody talks about the exposure triangle. For some reason, that was always really confusing for me. They're like, exposure triangle, exposure triangle. And even after I learned it, I understand why it's called the exposure triangle, but for whatever reason, the terminology is just confusing to me.
Yeah. There's no exposure triangle button on your camera or
Yeah,
menu setting. Yeah, of
it's
course.
just it's just the three settings working together. And all of the charts that they put out for that, they're like, oh, here's a chart for the exposure triangle. I'm looking at that and I'm like, what? Like
yeah.
this doesn't make any sense to me. It looks foreign. Like I'm not, and I get it. I get it. I understand what each one does. I understand when I look at the chart, like, okay, when it shows shutter speed and it shows the little guy running, right?
Hmm.
Like I get that it's freezing the action, but somehow they're all supposed to work together on this chart. And
Yeah.
that chart doesn't make sense to me at all. So
Mm.
every time I would see it, people are like, oh, you need to learn this exposure triangle. And I'm thinking like they must be referring to this chart that I don't understand because, I know how to work shutter speed. I know how, well, like, why are they telling me to learn this chart? It doesn't make any sense to me. So that exposure triangle, like, it's just the three terms together,
Yeah.
working together in harmony to get a crisp shot that you're going for. Maybe it's just me. Sometimes I feel
No.
like it takes me a little while to understand things. So maybe a little longer than other people. Like I need the information to click a certain way. So your podcast was probably the 37th podcast I'd listened to. Other people explained it in lots of other ways. And for whatever reason, yours was the one that clicked. Like I understood it. And then once I got it, everything else made sense, like all the
Hmm.
information that I had learned. So yeah, just using live view, like, oh, hey, I need to learn how to use aperture and shutter speed and all of these things. Well, mainly just aperture and ISO, I guess.
Yeah.
Wouldn't help much for shutter speed, but hey, I need to learn how to use aperture and ISO. Like, okay, use live view. Like that's the easiest way to truly understand right away what your settings are doing. So easy.
I was going to ask, now that you have some experience in photography, what advice would you give somebody who's like brand new to photography today? But that sounded like a pretty
Live view.
solid recommendation. Yeah. Was there anything else?
Take pictures of things you don't want to take pictures of. Like, don't always just take pictures of the things that you want to take pictures of, right? Because, if I only took pictures of flowers and bumblebees, I have 40,000 pictures on my iPhone. 10,000 of those are probably bumblebees and flowers. I have lots of pictures of those things. And though they aren't the quality that my camera produces, if I didn't put myself into different situations in photography, I wouldn't learn anything new. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't grow by only taking pictures of bumblebees and flowers, right? I had
Mm-hmm.
to go out and take pictures. Today I took pictures of a bridge. I took it from three different angles. Which angle was the best angle? The light was hitting it in different ways, and it was, there's probably about a 45-minute different time, and it was kind of early, so the sun hadn't all the way risen yet. And the way light works, right? Like if you're not natural light, I don't really like artificial light. Who knows if I'll ever get in a studio and take pictures that way because I'm not sure that's for me. I really like natural lighting, but how the light works, right? How does it affect your pictures when you're taking it? I took a picture through the trees today. There was a flower, it was on a bush, it was through the trees. Like the flower was here, the sun was up here. Well, I could see it through the viewfinder, but when I took the picture at one angle, it completely blew out the picture. So then I got down a little more, then it made really pretty sunspots on the picture. So figuring out how the light works for you and not against you. If you never took pictures other than what you wanted to take pictures of, you wouldn't be able to figure that out, I don't think. Wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to get that experience.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that is it's a lifelong practice. That is something that you're going to work with forever. I mean, I hope to always find a situation in which I am surprised by my camera or see something new and interesting because I feel like once I lose that. Like once it just all becomes like, I know exactly what I'm about to achieve here, it can lose its fun and it can lose its, I don't know, magic, I guess. So I love that. Sheila, I know that we are at the end of our time here. So before I let you go, listeners know that they can find you in the group. Where else can we find out more about you and maybe some of your work?
So far, only on Facebook. Castle Color Photography is my Facebook page. And that's it for now. I will have an online album or gallery where you could buy prints, but it's not live yet. So just Castle Color Photography on Facebook.
Perfect. Sheila, again, thank you so much for coming on, being vulnerable, sharing your journey with listeners. And I honestly look forward to keeping up with you and your photography here in the future.
I'll definitely be on the group.
Remember, this Community Spotlight series is all about you and the supportive beginner photography podcast community. Now, if you would like to be a part of this supportive community, we would love to have you. You can find a direct link to the group in the show notes, or just by simply heading over to beginnerphotopod.com/group. That's beginnerphotopod.com/group. Thank you again so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. And remember, the more that you shoot today, the better of a photographer you will be tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.